Well, doesn't time fly? Here we are. Powerful Nonsense, the podcast. Episode 25.
Oh, yeah.
We are halfway. No, not halfway. Quarter of the way. God, bad maths. Quarter of the way to our centenary episode. And to celebrate, I'm wearing some new shoes.
He's got new shoes. It's a good upgrade. I was saying they look a little bit like Puss in Boots boots, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, the next thing I'm buying is a little hat, so I can hold it and do the little cute eyes when somebody's disappointing me, and then I'm going to get a little sword and develop a Spanish accent.
So yeah.
Welcome to episode 25. It's another interview episode. These are coming out on a regular basis. I'm liking this. And this particular interview is very, very good. Not to say that the others weren't. They were also amazing. But, yeah, if you're feeling a little bit down, or if you're kind of thinking, I wish life was a little bit better, this is the interview for you. We are talking to James Lambert.
A guy who went from punching people in the face without gloves.
And without being beaten.
Unbeaten. He's a bit of a machine, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's gone from being, what else would he do? He was in
He's
a
a mixed
gang.
martial artist,
He
bouncer.
was a bouncer. He's run 101 marathons.
Yeah.
He's a badass, very basically. And he's now a happiness coach. And he's got a lot of experience and a lot to say.
And thankfully a very happy sounding guy as well.
Proper nice
which
guy.
you kind of want from a happiness coach.
Definitely.
So, yeah, we'll jump right in. It's a great interview. And, yeah, we'll catch you after the interview. So, without further ado, Mr. James Lambert.
So, hello, welcome James Lambert. Nice to have you on the show.
Lovely to be here, guys. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, thank you.
First of all, could you introduce who you are and tell us just a little bit about yourself, a bit of your backstory?
Absolutely, yes. Well, my name's James Lambert. Today, I'm a motivational speaker, an author, a happiness expert. I am a qualified personal trainer, and a bit of an entrepreneur. You know, I dabble in different things, and I also try and fundraise in whatever spare time I've got. So I'm very much about giving back to the community and fundraising for causes that are dear to my heart. That wasn't always the case, though, chaps, because part of my past, to put it in context, I am a former unbeaten bare knuckle boxer, bare knuckle fighter, unlicensed boxer, mixed martial artist, and bouncer. So I was immersed actually in a world of negativity, violence, and anger. I was a profoundly unhappy person. Grew up in southeast London. Born in Lewisham, raised in Catford, specifically very urban environment, very fast, very aggressive. And it's been a very interesting journey, but I'm happy to say that I've taken the pain of the past and used it to create a very positive persona for myself and hopefully others through the work I do, my writing and talking and so forth today. So that's it in a very condensed nutshell.
There's a lot there to work with.
Indeed, yes.
The first sort of thing we really want to find out, I mean, today speaking to you, you're like a super happy guy. Like, how do you go from punching people in the face without gloves to actually trying to make the world a happier place? Like, what happens? What change happens?
Indeed, no, it's a very astute question. Indeed, it's not, I'm often asked this, that there wasn't, as it were, an epiphany or like a single defining moment. It's actually been years. I mean, I wish I could say that. That would be it would be a lie quite blatantly, and it would be excusing and glossing over the enormous amount of hard work it has taken, and indeed it's an ongoing process, chaps. As I say, I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. I still have fleeting emotions of, as we all do, of whether it be displeasure, others lack of courtesy, rudeness. But the point being, I worked on myself, as I say. So there was thousands of hours of self-introspection, looking at myself, you know, attending seminars, reading thousands of books, self-taught, and just looking at, you know, my place in the world and who and what I wanted to stand for. So it's been a long journey, chaps, and it's ongoing. But basically, it was a process. It was a process whereby I realised a lot of my behaviour and habits they were not who I truly wanted to be. And so basically this has been an unfolding of who I have wanted to become, which is a happier person, more loving at heart. But indeed, I was frightened to let the world see that side of me because I was scared. Effectively, I was scared, and I covered that by gnashing my teeth at the world and snarling, being aggressive. But that was hiding a lot of fear. So.
Well, one thing because I bought your book recently, and one thing I saw that you said in there was that you kind of felt like you was always fighting against authority. Could you talk a little bit about that and why you felt that way?
Thank you. Specifically, which book was that, my friend? Because I have got a few out there now.
That was the How to Be Happy in 24 Hours.
Wonderful. Yes. Sorry, just repeat the question, please. It was
just about the fact that I think you said that you kind of felt like you was always fighting authority, or you always felt like you didn't quite fit in to like the kind of general system.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, as I say, I mean, in my life, we often joke about it now, but it's as if I came out fighting. I was born, I think it was as much as 7.5 weeks premature. Oh, wow. I was taken immediately from my mum. There was no bonding. I was placed in the incubator for the next 2 months, and that very set the tone as I look back for my alienation from others. I was, as I say, snatched from my mother at that time, fighting for my life. And the fight continued into nursery. I very distinctly remember my first day of preschool in those old Wendy houses, if you remember, chaps, when you're making the pretend cups of tea. And I remember some boy come bowling over and just pushed me. He wanted the little teacup. And I remember at that age, we're talking about 3.5, 4 chaps. I made all in the space of, a nanosecond. But I made a decision, I'm not going to back down, that's not the way it's going to be. So, of course, I retrieved the teacup. But the point being was that got wearing your tricycle. Well, indeed, a quick escape. But the point being was I made a decision. This is very interesting that I made a decision that it was quite apparent to me that you could be a wolf or a sheep, and I wasn't going to be a sheep for anyone. And therein lied the problem, because growing up in Southeast London, kindness, it was certainly seen as weakness. Now I hate that, but it was what it was. We can't flee from that. And so as I fought back, both against others, against authority, against anyone that was constricting me, or, I was always very creative and outspoken. Anyone that I think was looking to sully that or to confine that, which of course, I don't know if we've got time to get into this, chat, but, education at its worst doesn't promote, or, at its worst, as I repeat, doesn't promote free thinking. And I felt very stifled by that at an early age, and then, as I say, as I got older, unfortunately, I'm not saying, I've been told allegedly there's some good ones, but I had the terrible misfortune to meet very, very corrupt sort of police and people in authority. These were people that weren't doing things well, and so of course that does, you can't help but one's ideals and opinions are molded by what one sees. And again, just very quickly, chaps, I remember again, I wasn't any older than 5 years of old. 5 years of age, you have to remember. So a tiny little person. And outside of my immediate nuclear family, my headmaster, Mr. Lyons, was of course like God to me, a very early authority figure. And he was a very vicious man, a bully, as I now look back on it, unfortunately. And he took great pleasure in making little people cry. And I remember it was always a point of pride to me that I would never allow that to happen publicly. And he used to poke you very hard with his hand in the chest, trying to elicit a response. As I say, a very sadistic man. And I remember at 5 years of age, him poking me very, very hardly in the chest and emphasising each strike by saying, "James, you are a bad boy and nothing good will become of you." This was at 5 years of age, chaps. Now, of course, as an adult, I can now see that the man was clearly disturbed and somewhat, but at that age, it goes in and it goes in deep. So, of course, that it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I thought I was bad. The good things I did in school were ignored, and I only got recognition when I did something allegedly bad or I acted up. And this was very, very sad because, again, it compounded the problem. And again, you alluded to very astutely the alienation, it created this divide, like a them and us mindset. Most unfortunate, but that's what happens.
Yeah, I can kind of see why that sort of scenario at such a young age had a kind of roll-on effect. I'd like to actually, if I may, just go back onto something that you mentioned a minute or two ago about education at its worst, because our regular listeners will know that we're very passionate about education, and there's this new movement in the world, basically saying that education as it stands now is broken. It's it's stuck in the old days, and I'd just like to kind of know what you kind of think about that.
Well, absolutely. As I say, at its best, there is nothing better than, I see it in quite distinct things. You have education, and as it is in its current paradigm, which I think is obsolete at best, you have learning for its own sake. And you have this like parrot-like repetition where something is only really learnt for an exam. And I believe if you are only learning to tick boxes, you are fundamentally in trouble. Now, on the other side, the great learning, the Socrates of the past, now they were about, whether it's spoken or not, self-improvement. Now, therein, that knowledge, education, learning to improve oneself, that is learning at its best. Unfortunately, as I've alluded to, under the current paradigm, you have an obsolete, outdated system. And quite frankly, we update our phones more regularly than we've looked at the educational system, which is a profound nonsense. But no, I believe in learning. Of course I do. There is a need for schooling. There's a need for learning. But again, I personally don't like the learning by rote fashion, and particularly the subjects in which I studied. I'm a greater fan of life skills, generic life skills, because I could tell you Pythagoras' theorem at 15, and I could not be a productive member of society. So there's a fundamental flaw in that. So I can learn, I can leave school quoting the times tables and so on, but I can't do the basic. I can't manage my rent. I can't live peaceably with myself or others. These are fundamental life skills, my friend. And I think there is a juncture in education where that needs to be looked at and integrated.
Definitely, totally agree with you on that. One thing I want to talk about, you were saying how you obviously came from quite a rough area. Is it actually possible to be happy in that kind of environment, where environment you can't control? You can't control the people around you.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic question. Well, interestingly enough, your listeners may be in this very situation themselves, but my previous answer to that, in my other lifetime, as I call it, I would have said no, and I would have said that with true belief in that. I was the sort of person that angrily looked out at my environment. I'd blame the government. I'd point at the other, gang members. I'd point at the violent aggressors on the street, and I'd say they are the problem. They are the problem. Pointing aggressively at them, not realising that 3 of my own fingers are pointing back at me in self-condemnation. Now, the short answer to that is yes, I now know. One can definitely be happy in the most direst of situations, and you don't have to take my word of it. You just have to have a brief look at the news. There are people in Angola's, in mine, dire poverty, war type scenarios, chaps, and yet they are displaying kindness, generosity, and love. So it is not the environment per se that defines your levels of happiness, but how you think about that. I mean, a great poet once said, Milton, man can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven, and that's all about one's mindset. And indeed, I did it myself, because I travelled the world, been to some beautiful locations, Maldives and Jamaica, stunning. Was I any happier? No, because James Lambert was unhappy. So I could travel to paradise, but the unhappiness travelled with me. Conversely, now I'm a happier person. I go back to these places. I go back to help as a mentor to men caught up in violence and gang intervention projects. And I carry the happiness because it's within, not without.
You spoke about the gang projects you worked on. I was just wondering, what sort of common mindset problems do you see amongst these people?
Lack of self-belief. It is. I mean, there are, of course, there are a myriad of issues, but if I had to call one, a lack of self-belief in their innate worth. I struggled it myself. When you feel like a piece of shit, when you feel worthless, when you think that, you can, who am I to achieve? Who am I to earn a great amount of money, or certainly not legally? This malaise will, of course, present itself in a myriad of problems, including drug abuse, alcoholism, abuse against others, bullying, violence, etc., etc., etc. This all stems from a fundamental lack of self-worth. Conversely, when one feels better about oneself, you start treating yourself more kindly, eating better. We can get into later, looking after oneself. People allude to levels of consciousness, but it stems from, as I say, how you feel about yourself. Going back to Maslow's pyramidal, on the bottom you have just bare existence, surviving. At the top, thriving. When you are just surviving, when you are just getting by, of course, one's self-worth it is not very high up on one's list of priorities. So it's a huge thing. But yeah, in a nutshell, my friend, it would be a lack of self-worth.
So why do you think there is this huge lack of self-worth? Like you mentioned before, like pointing the finger at other people and like it's their fault, and so the kind of victim mentality or the kind of feeling of being an underdog. Is it due to maybe like the media, government statistics, things like that, or is it something else entirely, do you think?
Well, I think it's a number of things. As in all of these things, there is no one clear-cut, identifiable answer, because as we're all different, we all have different presenting challenges and problems. But one of the things I think is fundamentally, again, going back to look at our learning and our current mindset, as it were, is the external validation we seek. So we are taught from a very early age that you are, but the words we use, you have a merit. So you are based on award. And what's that based on? Achievement. Who gets to decide that? So the winner is the winner of the race, the person that gets the A plus. He's heralded as a triumph, and the other is not. So it sets in very early, chaps, this lack of self-worth. You're not worth anything if you don't achieve. Hang on a minute though, chaps. Who gets to define that achievement? I believe achievement is being a good person, being a great upstanding member of one's community, being kind, helping others. How do you define that? How do you define that under the current school system? You don't. And therefore, a person who otherwise is good, caring and kind leaves thinking they're worthless. This is a problem.
Definitely. I think, like you say, where people are always sort of chasing the next accolade. And I think that's one of the things that I think everybody has suffered for. How do you think, kind of being... A lot of people are kind of addicted to the potential happiness in the future. Like, once I get that A grade... Once I get that girlfriend, or once I start that business, a lot of people kind of base their happiness in the future. What do you think about that?
That is just a superb point. Deferred happiness, I call it. I've done it most of my life. I'd be happy when I got that Yamaha R6 red, black and white superbike. Woohoo! I got it. Yes, indeed, I was very happy. The thrill wears off. Okay, never mind. I'll be happy when I get my 10th gold chain, when I get my next watch, when I get... The list goes on. But of course, we're never happy in the now. And this in itself, chaps, is another whole thing. But this is the thing with deferred happiness, whether it's the past, mulling over our past glories or holidays or friends, good times, or what's to come, the future, all of which are fundamentally an illusion because they're not in the here and now. And this is a general worldwide malaise. And again, it's promoted very cleverly, like in marketing, because but under the current paradigm again, and it's not just beating up capitalism, but if it's always about consuming, and then the next upgrade of phone and one's TV, a bigger TV, a newer car, more powerful, another holiday, you see, you will be chasing it by virtue. And again, the Buddhists allude to like the middle way, which is about, in essence, seeking balance. So I think that's a very good place to start. And the best place to start is being present with oneself and those around you today, as we're doing at this moment, chaps, through this conversation.
Definitely. I think, like you said there about the like Buddha having balance, a lot of people say, who might come up to you, be like, "Oh, are you happy all the time? Like, how can I be happy all the time?" Like, what are the dangers of actual extreme happiness?
Well, you see, no, this is another juncture where we come off, because recently I wrote about that happiness, if you like, in my analogy, is akin to the clouds in the sky. Now they're fleeting. That's just but one weather condition, which of course can change, because clouds on a glorious summer's day can be white and fluffy, lovely. On another day, they can be seemingly threatening, very black, like one's mood, and threaten rain. So happiness is more likened, in my analogy, to a fleeting emotion. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, joy, on the other hand, I liken that to the sky. That's permanent, that's unchanging, that's always there, regardless of what the weather, sunny, indifferent, snowy, cold, is doing. And I believe, for what it's worth, that joy is actually our truest, most natural state. We have forgotten it, most of us, but that's very different from happiness. So yes, the extreme happiness could be a danger therein if you are relying on things to make you happy, of which they're innumerable, because what makes you happy, Jem, my friend, is different to what makes James happy, and different to what all of your listeners make them happy. But joy is a different state, and that's unchanging. So yes, you do have to beware and separate the two, and they're seemingly at first very similar. But no, I believe joy is unchanging, like the sky. That's the very essence of each person, unchanging. And then you have happiness, which is fleeting and is just but another emotion, just as jealousy, bitterness, joy, happiness, and the like are.
Definitely. I heard a statistic on another podcast recently. It was about like how kids actually laugh 300 times a day, and an adult actually laughs on average around 5 times a day. And I know you're adding to my allowance because I see your Facebook jokes every day. How important do you think it is that people get their daily amount of laughs? Like, how important is laughing?
Well, I'm so glad I've finally met the one person that enjoys my jokes. I knew there was one person out there. That is extremely validating, because although, as I've alluded to earlier, one shouldn't seek external validation, it's nice to know somebody likes them. So that's made my day. But
could you share one of your favourites?
One of my favourites. What? Oh, hang on, let me get this right. What did the policeman say to his stomach? You're under arrest.
As you can see, they have their comedic effect because of the cheesiness of them.
I love really, really cheesy jokes. They're some of my favourites.
Well, actually, you'll like this quickly. I'll just interject this. How do NASA prepare for a party? They plan it. I just get better.
So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So how important is laughing? Like, we just got a bit of a dose in there.
Oh, laughter, my friends, is vital. And it's something, as you say, I believe as adults, we get out of the habit of doing. So I absolutely believe in it. And again, it's very useful, as modern science is now telling us, that for this, like the placebo effect. So even if one doesn't feel happy, and of course, you wake up, you may not, but if you begin to smile, by sheer, for no reason, as it were, by virtue of just smiling, your body begins to change state. It feels happier than it did previously. So you can even, if you like, fake yourself into a better feeling state. So no, I'm very much for joy, laughter, happiness in all its forms, and jokes certainly plays it plays a part in that. Yes.
Definitely. Obviously, you were saying that a lot of your kind of journey towards being happier was kind of building a core of self-worth. Like, where do you start? Like, when you're already feeling in your head like, I've got nothing to give.
Yeah, again, a very good question, and it's one I take seriously, because I've tried to really identify those baby steps. Because as you say, when you are going through some stuff, and it's not, a lot of your listeners will be at the moment. I mean, life is serious, and quite frankly, no one gets out alive. So there are a lot of stuff going on, and I appreciate having been, as I now realise, in a depressed state myself. When you are in that black hole of despair, it's it's very difficult making that initial step towards improving oneself, or even finding hope. Indeed, when you can't see the light, you can't find the light switch. But I think it's, I mean, with different for every every individual. For me, it was a gradual dawning that this was not how the story was going to end. Now, I don't know where I believe that's in there, and each person, I mean, the point at which their break, so called, will be different. But I believe, don't be scared of that point, because indeed I think that lovely poet Rumi said that, the place where you're most cracked or damaged is where the light pours in. So what I realised is when I was at my lowest, it was almost like, oh right, well, I've got nothing. If this, this is shit, this is terrible. So what have I got to fear? What have I got to fear by facing another day? And as I say, at its worst, I did give myself a bit of an ultimatum, because I thought, look, quite frankly, I'm sick of the life as it is, being this violent, this unhappy, this sad. So I've got to see, what tomorrow will bring you, because I wasn't going to just, this wasn't going to be the end, So I think it is a process, but you discover, I believe you discover really what you're about once you get to your lowest point. There's just something in you, and as I say, you will find it, each individual will find it once they get there. But it really is, it's sort of when your back's up against the wall, when the chips are really down, that inner warrior that I believe we've all got. If you've never thrown a punch in your life, it's there, because you're just born with it. It's an innate part of your DNA. When your back's up against the wall, you've got nothing to lose, you'll find the strength needed. And it can be a very long journey, but it's one that, you are built to endure,
And obviously, you've kind of, as you say, you've gone from being essentially at rock bottom, as it were, to kind of being now a happiness expert. So, what would you say were kind of were or are happiness habits that you would suggest people employ just for the long term, really?
Absolutely. I think it's very important energetically as well how you start the day. So I liken it to like being, if it was like using the body analogy, so it's starting at the very top, at the brain, if you like, the head, that has to be self-sovereign, whereby the brain tells the body what to do, not vice versa. For example, chaps, what before, I used to get all hungry, so I just give in to my appetite. And appetites, as you know, can cover a whole gamut of things. We're talking about for men and for some women, you can have an appetite for pornography, for drink, for drugs, for lots of things that, yes, may bring you fleeting happiness, but leave you feeling emptier. This isn't religious or moralistic. I'm just saying, if you're honest, there are certain practices or habits you may currently have that after dabbling in them, you just don't feel great about yourself. And that's just being honest. So there are habits that you need to look at. So as I say, you need to be self-sovereign. So the mind needs to say, actually, I hear you, stomach, you're hungry, you want to give in to that. But actually, I override that, because I'm self-sovereign. So use mind as master, never as servant. That starts at the top. And also through one's discipline, through one's right or correct thinking. So as I say, that there's that voice we all have that talks very negatively. You're too fat, you're too thin, you're not good enough. That needs to be silenced. And it begins by replacing those statements with positive ones, affirmations as they're frequently called. But you need to start changing that and changing your self-talk, because I realised that the story I was previously playing in my mind, you're not good enough, you're worthless, you're violent, you are a fighter. You see, I could change that. Hitherto, I didn't know that was possible. But once I started changing my internal story, lo and behold, my behaviours could follow suit. So starting at the top, get the mind as master, never as servant. Moving down to the mouthpiece, correct speech. Use your speech to uplift yourself and others. So do away with the swearing. Again, not moralistic. It's just in general. I do it myself occasionally when I'm passionate. But in general, don't your every other word be F this, F that. It's low energy. It's negative. Uplift others. And as I was always told, a good, old truism, if you can't say nothing good, don't say nothing at all. So, it's that simple common sense things, moving down to one's heart, passion. Be passionate about what you do. You're not going to succeed in, I mean, you two guys are great examples with this podcast. When you do something you're passionate about, you actually give a damn about, that is going to rise to the top. It's going to shine through. Conversely, you go into a business, you go into a relationship that you don't care about, it's going to suffer. It's going to suffer. And you can go on and on, chaps. So, it's good stuff.
One thing you spoke about there was sort of negative self-talk. From a guy that's run 101 marathons, you must have some seriously positive good talk. Because I know when I'm running, my body's saying stop, but you must have something that tells you, come on, we're nearly there. How the hell do you get that?
That again, it's habit and repetition. People look at that. How do you go about running 101 marathon? How do you do one? How do you do half? One step at a time. And you go, that's very obvious. But again, we want our truths dressed up in all exotic gold-laced ribbon. Some of these truths, they're so simple. Winston Churchill alluded to. We trip over them. A man gets up, dusts himself down, and continues as if nothing happened. This is the trouble with us. They're hidden in plain sight, but they're so simple, people don't want to act on it. So all I do is I tell myself I can instead of I can't, and I take one step at a time, both figuratively and literally, in any endeavour I do. So in the 101 marathons, I kept going. Of course, on many of them, I was on some of the ultra runs I've done. I'm done in, but the only thing that my mind told me to continue. And as I said, by using mind as master, not as servant, because my mind was in charge, my body had to follow suit. If I listened to my body, I would have checked out at mile 1. But that's no good. That's what I'm saying. When one incorporates the power of one's mind, it's all over,
Me and Jem were, before we hit record today, we're trying to figure out roughly how much space was between each, how much time was between each marathon you ran. So I wanted to know, just on average, how often were you running a marathon to do 101?
I think technically it was just under, I don't know, it was 1.85, but just under 2 a week. I think how it balanced itself
Wow.
out. But yeah, it was sustained mileage over a year. So it was a very intense on the body. I can't escape that, but more so on the mind. But again, manageable. And I should say, I mean, the caveat to this is it wasn't for, this is a very important point, in fact, chaps, for overall, it's about developing one's why. Why are you going into it? Why are you pursuing that level, that course, that area of fitness, that work? Why? And for my why, it wasn't for myself. Again, I would have quit certainly after maybe the 5th or the 6th one. But I was doing it for my friend's son, who's unfortunately dying. He's got a muscle wasting disease. As we know, the heart's a muscle. So, and he expressed an interest to go to Disney World in Florida. And with respect, the mother, Vicky's a stay-at-home mum, and she's got 2 other children. So only the father, my friend John, works. And, he'd need several lifetimes just to get the deposit. So I said, look, please allow me to run, to commit myself to 101 marathons. And hopefully by making that rather foolish but sort of big example, we can raise the necessary funds to go. Long and the short of it, I completed 101 marathons. They did go to Disney World in December last year, had a super time, and whatever happens at the end, they're going to always have those memories that no one can take away. So, but the point being, I had a very, very strong why, chaps. So when I wanted to quit, and I would, if it was just for me, I thought of Noah. I thought of his family. And again, I encourage you and your listeners, if you really want to get something done, you want to go to the next level in your business, you want to lose maybe a couple more pounds or bulk up, get a strong why in place. That's going to get you up early when you want to just roll over and hit the snooze button. That's going to make you go out when it's too hot or it's too cold, ad infinitum, whatever excuse you want. You need a strong why. And sometimes I'm just gently alluding to the fact that doing it for someone other than yourself, that's a good place to start.
Definitely. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, well done.
One thing I wanted to touch on, and I think a lot of people miss out. I mean, people are always kind of looking at the end goal, but I think there can be a lot of enjoyment actually in that struggle. I'm sure you were excited that you were getting your 50 marathons through. Talk about how people can kind of learn to kind of enjoy that journey a little bit more.
It's such a superb point because therein lies the thing. Again, as you referenced earlier, with this deferred happiness, always thinking about the end result. What we actually forget is the great pleasure to be taken in the self-improvement along the way to one's goal attainment. And therein, the true masters know, is where the real excitement, the real magic, the real alchemy of change occurs. It's in the very struggle to get to the top. And as I say, I experienced that through not just the running and the 101 marathons, the ultra running, but certainly in my previous training as a fighter, when it got so difficult. Now, it wasn't, the end objective wasn't just to have a tough body, glistening, with sweat and six pack. That's a very nice, but that was all a byproduct of being the hardest trainer in the gym. So when my coach asked everyone to do 100 push-ups, some of them would begrudgingly doing it after a lot of moaning. Chaps, I didn't even start counting until I'd done 100. Mindset. You see, I did the first 100 for me, the other 100 for him. And this is very important. It's a mindset. I loved the journey. I reveled in the pain because I knew on the other side of that was literally glory, for wanting, but therein it lies. Why does the bodybuilder, it doesn't, the 8th, the 9th, 10th, it's in the 10th one, the one that burns the most, that is stripping down his muscle fibers, and he relishes it. He grows to look forward to that. Why? Because he knows the growth is in the struggle.
Definitely. Another point that I wanted to make is just like a lot of people kind of inflate what happiness should be. Like they want the better car, like you say, you want the motorbike, the better motorbike, the bigger house. Like I'm a big believer in the fact that you kind of need to decrease what you need to be happy, like decreasing your kind of expectation on happiness. I was just wondering if you can say anything a little bit about that, like just decreasing what you need.
Yeah, again, it's not, as I say, there has to be, it's a good point, and I do want to talk, people do talk about that, the line of least resistance. So if you look at Feng Shui, or you actually remove things, the greater the whole of the sum is. But I think there's this defining, or there's a split point here where I believe it's a trap to think that inherently more is bad. No, I don't necessarily think so, but I think it is important for you as an individual, for every single one of your listeners, to identify what makes them happy. Because what I did previously, chaps, was I was shown a watch of Tag Heuer and Rolex. I bought into that. I never did my own study. Like, actually, do I like that myself? If you do, fine, that's not a problem. Do I like that BMW, or do I like it because I think my neighbours will see me with more respect? We have to analyse our thoughts, because I think there's too much passivity. And, we just do, we go along with the crowd. We think we have to go to the Maldives to be happy. As I said, I went, it was very nice. But fundamentally, you can be just as happy in your own garden. This is the truth. So, as I say, I would just encourage each and every person to not necessarily strip away, but to identify if more conspicuous consumption does make one happy. And as I say, I gently allude, only speaking for myself, that no, it doesn't. As you say, sometimes less is more.
Okay, and one thing that I did want to ask, you mentioned change a little bit earlier. My question is, do you think that as you get older, happiness changes? In terms of maybe what makes you happy, or just the general phenomenon itself?
I would certainly hope so, my friend. I would certainly, let's just say some of the things that make me happy, in inverted commas, I was doing as a young man, I would shudder at doing now. So no judgment here, but speaking for myself, if one is even vaguely serious about self-improvement, which your listeners all are, I would jolly well hope that your attitudes on what makes you happy does change. And as an example, what I'm saying is, drinking 15 pints and having a split when you're 16 and 17. Oh, yes, if you asked me then, was I happy? I would have said in an unconscious Neanderthal-like way, yes, I am, thank you. Now, at the moment...
And you would have got a high five from us, like, Bad man.
The trouble is, what I'm
You
saying
machine.
is the thought of doing that now, it just fills me with dread. No judgment here, no judgment. But what I'm saying, for me, you can be filling that time a little bit more prudently, and that's all I'm going to say there. But yeah, hopefully, as you get older, yes, what makes you happy, I would hope, does change.
I know we haven't really touched on it yet, but you said you said in your bio you sent over to me that you've had two near-death experiences, like just because one wasn't enough. What did you learn from your near-death experiences?
Well, life is short, chaps, and seize it by the scruff of the neck, and live it up, live it up. As I say, I've been very, very fortunate in my life, both in some interesting violent encounters and certainly some very near fatal motorbike accidents. That, goodness me, life is short. And, it's often said, it's, become a cliche, tomorrow's not promised, or you might get hit by a bus. But the joke is, one day will be your last. So the point being, we might as well try and enjoy it within reason to the best of our ability, do something positive, do something you're passionate about in the meantime. And, really just try and find your place in the world, continuously self-improve, and just live it up because, time is promised to no one. So.
Cool. I was just wondering, do you think there's actually any sort of clear comparisons between entrepreneurship and actual fighting?
Oh, goodness me, the parallels are striking. Tenacity, the ability to not give up, to roll with the punches, to sometimes I lead the ropes I used to occasionally lean on, at least when the fighters were in the ring, my friends, and not the fields. There are times when you have to take a breather from one's business, the inclement weather conditions of business, similar to the ups and downs in the fight, the tenacity to bite down on your gum shield when you're getting hit. That's like a metaphor for, the business isn't always going to be smooth sailing. You've got to roll with the punches that life throws you. So the similarities are striking. But again, we keep going back to the mindset, chaps. You look at the champions. Muhammad Ali alludes to the fact that he hated training, every second of it, nay. But he knew if he suffered now, he would get to live eternity as a champion. And as he still does very fondly in our minds now, he's transcended the sport. But that was because when times got tough, he stuck with it. And that is, again, goes back to mindset. But a lot of us have got a passive, weak mindset. So when times get going, a lot of us, friends, I hate to say it, we're looking for the nearest exit. And, I had it on the door. You had a lot of people that, don't get me wrong, martial arts, they could chop those bricks really nicely. And that looked impressively. Once it started kicking off on the door, they were looking for the exit. And this is like life. Violence, real violence, is ugly. There's nothing glamorous about that, my friends. But that is like life. It's not always pretty, is it? The perfect relationship, the perfect business. If your listeners didn't know, it doesn't exist. But to say it can't be good and much better, but this is the thing. We've got to go from fantasy to so-called reality, and it's what we decide it to be.
I really love this. I don't know the actual quote, but I know Zig Ziglar says it, and he kind of says, like, a lot of people wait till they start feeling really bad before they pick up the book again. Like, how important do you think it is to be, like, topping up your happiness daily?
Essential. It's in a nutshell, because the way I look at it, Jem, is that I now do it for a living. I'm in and around happiness and motivating people through speaking one-on-one with, as my role as a life coach. Volunteering work, even as a personal trainer, obviously with my books as well. But yet I do it, and I need to do it daily. How much more so for the average guy that's just going to a crappy job he hates? Still, not give up on his dream, but that's part time. It's necessary, a steady diet through both what you ingest, through reading, watching, listening to. It's got to be positive, because quite frankly, you can't sustain any kind of habit without that. Again, to use that gym analogy, I see it, the guy that looks really cut, really good, he doesn't train once in a while, my friends. It's consistent. And that point can be taken, you want a consistently good relationship with one's peers or girlfriend, whatever. You've got to consistently put in some goodness. It's no good doing something once in a while. So again, get your mindset right, consistency, and a steady diet, nay daily, of positivity, I think is required, yes.
Just want to quickly touch on, because I'm a bit of a health fanatic myself, and could you just talk a little bit about the sort of relationship between like health, like what you eat and exercise and happiness? Because I know it's so important, but a lot of people kind of overlook these sort of quick wins you get. Because I did a bit of stretching this morning, and you go do a few pull-ups, and you just feel so much better just by just doing such a little amount sometimes.
It's well said, and you're right on the money there. Again, in terms of changing one's state in the first instance, even people think you have to go to a Himalayan retreat and meditate for 10 years. Not at all. As you say, just by moving one's body. Our bodies were made to move. Lots of us do our jobs, not through no fault of one's own. We're living sedentary lives. We drive more than we walk. We may go to an office, sit down 8 or 9 hours, come home, watch some TV. But as you say, just by moving, literally seconds in the morning, as soon as I wake up and after I've said, yippee, it's another day, I get down on the floor and bang out some press-ups, do some stretching, do some sit-up. As you say, stretch, change the physicality of oneself, in turn directly affects one's mood for the better. So the link is, and again, not just because I say it, those that are impressed by modern science or whatever, go and do the research. It's all there. The effects are very, very linked now. That movement, whether it be walking or running, directly affects one's state of mind and well-being.
Okay, awesome. We've decided to set somewhat of a little challenge for you. How much of a challenge it will be, we don't know. What with you being a happiness coach, so you could find it quite easy. But obviously, you've got your book, How to Be Happier in the Next 24 Hours. So the challenge we've kind of set for you is to give our listeners a rundown of how they can be happier in the next 24 minutes.
Excellent. Wow. I mean, it gets really deep, because the joke is, people wouldn't believe me, but it can get even, you can forget how to be happy next 24 minutes. You can be happy in the next 24 seconds.
No way.
If you make a decision to be. Again, I've got to repeat that because people will miss this. And again, it's hidden. The greatest truths are hidden in plain sight, my friends. You want it to be greatly esoteric, but it starts with a decision. I don't care what's going on, not in an unkind way, but you could have debts at the moment. You could be doing a job you hate. You could be in debt. You could be, your relationship, your very life is falling apart. With all that being said, right now, people can do it with me as they're listening, but you can make a decision. With all that being said, I decide from this point on, now and from this point on, to be happy. Now, that, as all of this talk has alluded to, you have to then back that up by correct thinking, correct eating, exercise, positive things daily, cutting out the negative news, maybe dialing down if you smoke a bit of whatever, supporting it by good habits, but starting now, deciding to be a happier person. Now, with that decision being said, if you're serious about it, you back that up by the things I spoke about: right thought, right speech, passion, backing it up by the good actions, all the things we've spoken about today, chaps. And literally, it starts with a decision, and that can alter fundamentally the rest of not just today, the rest of the week and month, but the rest of your life. It starts with a decision. I decide now, and for the rest of my days, to be a happier, more joy-filled, joyful person.
Great answer. This podcast is called the Powerful Nonsense Podcast. So we have these questions that we ask everybody we interview. And the first question is, what's the most powerful piece of advice you've ever been given? Followed by, what's the biggest loads of nonsense you've ever heard?
Oh, well, okay. First, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. And I can. Always say I can. Even if you can't, you will figure it out. But tell yourself I can. Believe that with a passion. It will then become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you will do it. You can do anything. I'm not saying it'll be easy. That's commonly misunderstood. You go, oh yes, I want to be the best bodybuilder, the best sprinter in the world. No, I didn't say it'll be easy, but with daily, consistent, hard work and never giving up, you will at minimum be a better you by an infinite amount than you were, whenever you started, you made that decision. So that's certainly what I would like to say. Believe in yourself, and I can. The biggest load of nonsense and bull I have ever been told is a leopard can't change his spots. Hello, I'm living proof you can. So let's get that right. I want to hear this bull crap that gets passed down from generation to I call them mind viruses. They're inherited and they're never explored or exposed for the lies they are. Because if I believe guys, the stuff I could, I was told after one of my accidents I would never walk again. Bullshit. I'm here today, but you've got to be careful for what you listen, because a lot of your peers, a lot of so-called friends and family members, a lot of your environment, a lot of people who they roll with, they're not supporting you. You've got to be your own best supporter. That's why one's self-talk is so important. Believe in yourself. Tell yourself you can. Go out and make it happen.
Excellent stuff.
Excellent. Really good answer. We've also got another question that we ask. Obviously, you spoke earlier about constantly needing to read loads of books and consume things just to for personal development purposes, essentially. So, do you have like a top book? Like, if someone was going to read only one book in the next year,
or a top three.
heaven forbid. But if they were only going to read the one book in the next year, what book would you recommend?
Unstoppable by James Lambert.
Hey.
Good answer.
You've got to get that in there, chaps. But no, of course, there are some profoundly. Any book can be a portal into a whole new universe of self-discovery and self-knowledge. There are so many books. I tell you, to keep it to just one or two is an enormous help, because I'm a lover of the written word and so on. I think some that come to mind, because I do want to answer the question. Some that come to mind would certainly be anything by Robin Sharma, but particularly the Greatness Guide. He's got the Greatness Guide 1 and 2, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just say the Greatness Guide by Robin Sharma. His most popular book was, I believe, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, for your listeners out there. Again, I have to put out a personal favourite of mine, an author you chaps will probably be familiar with, amazing man, Paulo Coelho, and Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist specifically. Very, very powerful book for all the entrepreneurs that they're listening, business, anyone that wants to get anything done. Lovely story, but it's very multifaceted. And just, as I say, I think that's two that come to mind. But there's so many chaps. There's honestly, there's so many good pieces of work by people like, I don't know, Wayne Dyer, as you've alluded to, Zig Ziglar. There's great books by Brian Tracy, Eric Thomas. The list just goes on and on. It's amazing stuff out there.
Okay, and finally, so if people who love what they've heard, they really want to get to know you a little bit more, or maybe want to read your stuff, like how can people get in contact with you? How can they purchase your books? I know I'll put the links onto the blog, but yeah, if you can give a little bit of information.
Absolutely, yes. Well, I've got an Amazon author page on Amazon, so that can be found either on .co.uk or the .com site, but that would just be under my name, James Lambert, Lambert. I've got a website, www.jameslambertcoaching.co.uk. Also on Twitter, my handle's @MrHappy79. I suppose Facebook, if anyone wanted to link up with me on there. I've now got a public page, so again, that's just under James Lambert. But yeah, they're the main ways, chaps, and to keep in touch with me, follow my work, look out for my work on Amazon. And there is actually a link on the website now, James Lambert Coaching. So hopefully people, I've made it quite easy to get hold of some of the materials now.
Excellent. So it's been a pleasure to have you on, and I'm sure we'd love to have you back at some point in the future.
Oh yeah, definitely have you back.
I'd love it. It's been a pleasure talking to you, chaps. Really enjoyed your company, and the time's just flown by.
So that was James Lambert.
What
Great
a legend.
Guy.
What a legend.
What a legend indeed. Very, very nice guy. And he's just a really, really interesting take on the world and just happiness in general. What did you think, Jem?
I really liked it, but for me, the most powerful point he made was the fact that you just have to make the decision to be happy. Like, it's in your power. He, as he said, like, a leopard can change his spots, and it just really comes down to, like, do you want to enough?
Yeah, definitely.
What about you?
Yeah, kind of the same thing, really. When we set him that little challenge, I was half expecting a list of things that you could do, just like affirmations and this sort of thing, but actually what he said surprised me, but in a kind of, oh yeah, of course, kind of way. Yeah, just really, really really interesting guy and lovely guy as well.
I think it goes back to a lot of what we say, like a lot of this, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whatever, it all comes down to that mindset. It seems that everybody it seems the people we interview anyway seem to understand that it's the mind that controls everything. If you can kind of get hold of those reins, then you can really take control of your life.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that interview as much as we enjoyed that interview, because we came out of that afterwards being like, yeah, that was so good, in those voices as well, obviously. Yeah, so we're going to wrap things up as we always do. First things first, if you've got anything you want us to discuss or any feedback on the show, anything you'd like us to ping over to James, perhaps.
Or if you're somebody who's quite interested in yourself and maybe would want to come onto the podcast, if you want to speak about something, then yeah, let us know.
Then drop us a line. You can email me at wayne@powerfulnonsense.com. You have to type it with the Wayne as well. No,
and gem@powerfulnonsense.com, and that's Gem spelled CEM.
Or if you prefer Twitter, as many of you do, you can tweet me. I won't say the other one. At Wayne_Ingram.
And Gem, which is, no, my Twitter is at CKYILDIZ. And I just want to say that I don't think I say enough, but at the end of every time we finish a podcast, what I do on powerfulnonsense.com is put like a full breakdown of the episode, and you can get all the links. So there'll be links to James's book, his website. There'll also be maybe links to books that we've discussed, or just a breakdown of the episode to kind of refresh your mind.
Yes, definitely.
So check that out.
And the most important thing, which I say this every week, and we've got a little bit of an issue because somebody has sent us a message saying, left a review on iTunes.
It hasn't appeared.
And it hasn't appeared. So we thank you for the thought, but we seem to be unable to see your review, which is a real shame.
I reckon that's the case. I think that's what's happened. I think we've got thousands, so many reviews.
Everybody's like, your show's amazing.
And Apple are just like, we don't know what to do with all these 5-star reviews they get.
Yeah, they're inundated with these reviews. That's clearly what
it's just going through the system.
Yeah, and it's just taken away. It's like when you send your Christmas cards too late.
Turn up in February.
And yeah, they turn up in February because there's such a huge backlog.
It makes sense though, doesn't it?
I mean, I get that with my Valentine's cards.
Oh yeah.
Like my Valentine's cards still haven't turned up for years gone by.
Well, I'm a bit worried for next year because if you have those sexy shoes on, Wayne, who knows what might happen? You strutting down the street in those bad boys.
I'll be getting Valentine's cards for my shoes. But anyway, please do leave a review for us if you do enjoy the show. If you don't enjoy the show, you're all right. You don't need to leave a review. But then if you don't enjoy the show, why are you still listening to us rambling
James
on
said,
that?
if you've got nothing good to say, it's just probably better just keeping stum.
Well, although we do appreciate honesty. Yeah, so if it's stuff that you want us to improve, email us. If it's stuff you love, review it on iTunes. That's our deal. But yeah, so leave a review on iTunes. Hopefully it will show up. I'm guessing it will. I'm hoping this is just a blip. But yeah, please leave a review. It really, really does help boost the show, boost the profile of the show, and I'm going to do it again. It really does help us get really cool guests to do interviews. Cool guests like James Lambert, the new addition, Blessing, Kyle Eschenroder, Marnes Denton, and English Monroe.
Nice one. I'm gonna hold you to that.
I'm going to try and remember. I haven't even got them written down. This is all from memory, so I'm going to try and keep trying to do this.
Cool.
So,
anyway, enough
so
of
the list
us.
will get long. It will be like a 5-minute list if you don't start leaving those reviews. That's my threat to you guys.
Anyway, we are out of here. So thanks again for listening. I hope you're enjoying the content. We're loving doing what we're doing. So
Absolutely.
Have a great week.
Love you all very much.
I probably said that, Courtney. Have a great week. Sam.
Have a great week. Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.